So, Pirates of the Caribbean.
Hello, Beastie.
Some of you may already know this, but around this time last year, I made a timeline video for the Pirates of the Caribbean saga. Upon rewatching my video, I must admit, it was not a great video. Everything from my mic quality being pretty shoddy to the overall focus on humor over the information presented. So in honor of one of my favorite videos to make, I decided to remake my video in its entirety. On top of that, about a month after the original video's release, it was revealed that there would be a Sea of Thieves tie-in to the Pirates of the Caribbean, set after the events of Dead Men Tell No Tales. So I bought the game and gave it a shot. Not only is the expansion absolutely amazing, the entire game is, and I highly recommend playing it. The developers even managed to incorporate the game's already existing lore into the Pirates of the Caribbean expansion, so in this video I will be explaining not only the Pirates of the Caribbean film franchise and the rides, but also the Sea of Thieves lore and the expansions, and towards the end of the video, I'll be explaining what happened to the Pirates of the Caribbean universe after Sea of Thieves. And without further ado, I bring you the updated Pirates of the Caribbean timeline. We begin with the creation of the universe and the reign of the Titans. Atlas, brother of Prometheus, the creator of mankind, had a daughter of his own. Named Calypso, she reigned as the goddess of the seas. Her story will be explored later in the video. For all we know, much of human history proceeds the same way. Empires rise, fall, become rebuilt, and become forgotten. We eventually come to the birth of the infamous explorer, Christopher Columbus. His own personal story is not very important to the overall universe of Pirates of the Caribbean. However, the impact of his colonial efforts changed the course of human history forever, in both this fictional reality and our own. To simplify the course of events, the Europeans of the era believed that the ocean west of the continent was actually a single, massive ocean that bordered on Asia. For many hundreds of years, the kingdoms and empires of the European continent relied on the land passage to Asia for trading, which was called the Silk Road. With the fall of Constantinople to the Turkish Ottoman Empire in 1453, trade came to a grinding halt on the European front, since Christian traders were denied entry. At the time, Portugal was the dominant European power on the seas, while its neighboring state, Spain, had been slower to the punch in exploring the world's oceans, since they had been spending years waging land-based wars. The newly empowered Spanish monarchs decided to fund Columbus's voyage out west in hopes of finding a new trade route to Asia. In late 1492, after nearly a month at sea, Columbus and his crewmen had made landfall to an island off the coast of Florida, which he called San Salvador, which is known today as the Bahamas. Columbus had also called the native peoples of the island Indians, as he believed he had found an island near India. Columbus would explore many islands in the area, such as modern-day Cuba and Haiti, and he faced violent resistance from many native groups for his aggression towards the native people. He took many natives with him back to Europe as proof of the existence of the land west of Europe, and to try to convert them to Christianity. He met with the Spanish monarchs, who offered to enslave the natives as well. Columbus wrote a letter addressed to the Spanish court, in which he says, "Hispaniola is a miracle. Mountains and hills, plains and pastures are both fertile and beautiful. The harbors are unbelievably good, and there are many wide rivers of which the majority contain gold. There are many spices and great mines of gold and other metals." The second voyage was far more horrific than the first. So horrific, in fact, that I do not feel comfortable explaining it in this video. At least not in too much detail. The second voyage was a horrible colonial effort to absolutely plunder the Caribbean Sea of its resources and a mass slaughtering of the natives. This would set the trend for future endeavors of Europe in the area, leading all the way into the 1800s on a mass level. This second voyage has a key player, however, Juan Ponce de Leon, who we will return to in a moment. In 1519, Conquistador Hernan Cortez led an armada for a full-scale invasion of the Aztec Empire in modern-day Mexico. Cortez, armed with a magical sword, was unstoppable in battle against the Aztecs. He slaughtered the populace and depleted the civilization of its resource.
This is Aztec gold. One of 882 identical pieces they delivered in a stone chest to Cortez himself. Blood money paid to stem the slaughter he wreaked upon him with his armies. But the greed of Cortez was insatiable. So the heathen gods placed upon the gold a terrible curse. And immortal that removes but a single piece from that stone chest shall be punished for eternity.
During the mass slaughter committed by Cortez, the heathen gods placed a curse on the 882 pieces of gold which is given to Cortez by the natives. The gold was blood money paid to stem the slaughter he wreaked upon the indigenous tribes of the New World with his armies. Instead of successfully bartering an ending to the slaughter, the natives were still in extreme danger, as Cortez was even more consumed with greed and bloodlust. In 1523, Juan Ponce de Leon was heavily involved in the mass carnage of Columbus's second voyage, and in doing so, earned the position of governor of the province of Higui. As soon as he left the position, he set on a voyage to explore the lands north of Cuba. He went to Florida in 1513 in search of the Fountain of Youth. He returned to Spain and soon departed to Guadalupe for another conquest. And in 1521, he set on another voyage to Florida. He was injured by a poison-tipped arrow and returned to Havana. In 1523, Ponce de Leon set out to his next voyage in Florida, which would end up being his final voyage. His ship, the Santiago, was caught in a large storm, which sent the ship to be miraculously stuck on the edge of a cliff. Due to unknown circumstances, Ponce de Leon and his entire crew died on board the ship, with his corpse being found in the bed of the captain quarters of the ship. In the same year, one of the crewmen of the Santiago had recorded the routes taken to search for the Fountain of Youth in his logbook, of which was found by the 4 explorers of the Dark Dynasty, and they included the routes in the Mao Kun map. The Mao Kun map is a map that leads to otherworldly places, such as the realm that would eventually be known as Davy Jones's Locker. The existence of the map and the mysterious death of Ponce de Leon would spawn myths of the Fountain of Youth being located in Florida, and for well over 200 years, many explorers would search for the fountain. Hernan Cortez died in 1547, and his spirit became contained within his magical sword, of which can be released upon reciting of an incantation. In 1600, the East India Trading Company was established by British merchants. The company operated as a megacorporation, formed by monopolizing international trade, and over time grew to have military power and support from the British government. The company was granted royal charter by Queen Elizabeth I in December of 1600. At an unknown date in the early 1600s, a Scottish sailor named Davy Jones meets the goddess Calypso, and the two fall in love. Calypso bestows upon Jones the task of ferrying souls to regions beyond, and grants him the Flying Dutchman as his vessel for the task. Jones was only able to set foot on land after 10 years of his service to Calypso, and when completed, a new Dutchman captain would be found. 10 years later, Jones returns to land, only to not find Calypso anywhere. Around this time, the first ever Brethren Court of Pirate Lords meets, where they help Jones strip Calypso of her powers as a deity and claim the seas as the possession of mankind. Jones becomes overcome with guilt for hurting the love of his life, so he carves his heart out and locks it in the dead man's chest and buries it on Isla Cruces. Jones and his crew of the Dutchman were now cursed men, devoid of true purpose, who now haunt the seas and strike fear into sailors the world over. Between 1661 and 1670, the Second Brethren Court convened. The pirate lords Henry Morgan and Bartholomew established the Pirate Code in the Pirata Codex. They had also created an anthem for the court, one that would be known by many pirates through the years: Hoist the Colors. In 1680, Edward Teach, more commonly known as the notorious Blackbeard, was born in Bristol, England. In 1687, Cutler Becket was born in Somersetshire, England, to the prosperous Becket family, owner of the Becket Trading Company. In 1688, Henry Morgan was believed to have passed away due to liver poisoning, but in truth he self-isolated on a remote island studying alchemy. Not much is known about what became of his new lifestyle. In 1690, the future captain of the Black Pearl and pirate lord of the Caribbean, Jack Sparrow, is born to an unknown woman and Edward Teague on a ship in a hurricane. Around this time, Joshua Gibbs is also born. 10 years later, in 1700, the golden age of piracy began. This is almost right as the Renaissance ends. The era is defined by pirates being known as the true dominant force on the seas, so much so that governments of the world would fear these now legendary figures. This is where the bulk of the Pirates of the Caribbean story takes place. In 1705, Cutler Becket was captured by a band of pirates led by Christophe Julien de Rapier. After days of torture at the hands of the pirates, Becket forms a deep-seated hatred for all men who sail under a Jolly Roger. Lord Reginald Marmaduke Bracegirdle Penwallow barters for Becket's freedom from the pirates. In 1706, the teenage Jack Sparrow assembled his first ever pirate crew. His goal is to find the magical sword of Hernan Cortez. He discovers the city of the dead, has altercations with the mermaids of Isla Serena, and eventually finds Isla Fortuna, where he finds the sword of Cortez. Cortez's spirit is released from the sword, and Jack releases the spirit of Montezuma, a former servant of Cortez, to defeat him. In 1707, England and Scotland united and formed Great Britain, which would go on to be the dominant power in the seas over the coming centuries. In 1708, the notorious Spanish Navy pirate hunter Armando Salazar is on a quest to eradicate piracy in the New World, and he sets his sight on the Wicked Wench after having sunk a multitude of other pirate vessels. After the captain of the Wench was killed in battle, Jack Sparrow takes command of the vessel and mocks Salazar, and goads at the mighty Spanish captain to follow Jack into the mouth of the Devil's Triangle. Jack orders his men to throw ropes overboard to hook onto some rocks, causing the Wench to make a hard turn out of the triangle. Salazar's vessel is sent careening into the depths of the Devil's Triangle to a watery grave, and Salazar's spirit would be trapped within the triangle for decades. Also in 1708, William Turner is born to Bootstrap Bill Turner in Glasgow, and Elizabeth Swan was born to Weatherby Swan in London. In 1709, the Rogue Pirates were formed, and a year later in 1710, the group would go on to destroy the ship of the young Hector Barbosa, and the pirate lords of Shipwreck Cove agreed to deal with the rogues. Jack Sparrow accidentally helps the rogues escape Shipwreck Cove, but soon after Jack leaves the pirate life and he joins the East India Trading Company. After years of servitude for the East India Trading Company in 1715, Jack Sparrow successfully defended the ship he was serving on from pirates. Cutler Beckett, his commander, promotes him to being a captain of his own ship, which he names the Wicked Wench after his previous ship. In 1716, Jack Sparrow is tasked with transporting a shipment of African slaves, of which Jack cannot go through with. Jack frees the slaves, and in retaliation, Beckett has Jack branded and has his ship burned and sunk. Jack goes after his sunken ship and makes a deal with Davy Jones to raise the ship from the depths, where he will serve as captain for 13 years, at the cost of serving a century aboard the Flying Dutchman. Jack names his newly reborn and charred ship the Black Pearl, and becomes the acting pirate lord of the Caribbean Sea. Having knowledge of the history of Hernan Cortez, Jack went to Tortuga, Haiti, in order to assemble a crew to search for the treasure of Cortez in 1718. Only 3 days into the voyage, Jack's new first mate, Hector Barbosa, leads a mutiny against him after Jack reveals the location of Isla de Muerta. Jack is marooned by his crew on Rumrunner's Isle, and only 3 days later, he meets with Rumrunners and barters for passage off the island. Barbosa and the crew of the Black Pearl sail to Isla de Muerta and successfully find the treasure of Cortez. The crew become cursed after having spent the gold, and they plan on returning the gold soon after. Bootstrap Bill Turner gives his gold coin to his son, in the belief that the crew deserve to remain cursed for all time for their betrayal of Jack, and the crew straps Bill to a cannon and has him sent to the depths. Only after this do the crew of the Black Pearl learn that they require Bill's blood in order to lift the curse. Incapable of dying due to his curse, Bill strikes a deal with Davy Jones to be freed from his torturous existence, at the cost of serving a century aboard the Dutchman. Around this time, Blackbeard was believed to have been killed in a battle off the coast of North Carolina. However, he survived and dedicated himself to learning dark magic. In 1720, Will Turner sets out to find his father after his mother dies. At the same time, Weatherby Swan and Elizabeth Swan set out to the Caribbean island colony of Port Royal, aboard the HMS Dauntless. The Dauntless comes across a recently destroyed merchant vessel that Will was aboard. Will ends up unconscious while floating in some of the wreckage, and is spotted by Elizabeth and the crew of the Dauntless, and he is brought on board. Elizabeth finds the gold piece that Will wears around his neck, and she decides to take it from him to prevent anyone from suspecting that he was a pirate. Weatherby Swan becomes the governor of Port Royal upon arrival, and Will becomes the apprentice of John Brown, the blacksmith. In 1727, George Augustus was crowned as the King of England. In 1728, James Norrington is promoted to the rank of Commodore, and Jack Sparrow arrives in Port Royal in search of a new ship to steal. During the ceremony, Elizabeth falls off a cliff and Jack saves her from drowning, and is soon captured by the Royal Navy, escapes, battles Will, and is imprisoned. The Black Pearl attacks Port Royal, having been summoned by the Peace of the Gold of Cortez, and Elizabeth is captured by Barbosa. Will frees Jack from prison, where they then steal the HMS Interceptor and sail to Tortuga to assemble a crew to sail to Isla de Muerta. They arrive on the island after Barbosa had told Elizabeth of why she was needed to break the curse, and he also arrived at the island. Jack is captured by Barbosa and his crew and Will takes Elizabeth aboard the Interceptor. Barbossa and his crew chase after the Interceptor after becoming aware that they're the true child of Bill Turner being aboard. They destroy the Interceptor, capture the crew, and maroon Jack and Elizabeth. The two escape, lead the Royal Navy after the Pearl at Isla de Muerta. Jack steals a medallion, becomes cursed himself, and he battles Barbossa. The curse is broken, and Jack eventually kills Barbossa. Jack is then captured by the Royal Navy, sent to be hung at the gallows, but is freed by Will. He escapes Port Royal aboard his newly reclaimed Black Pearl, and he sets out on his next adventure. After their life-changing adventure, Will trains Elizabeth with sword fighting, and Jack the Monkey also steals a coin and becomes cursed. In 1729, only 1 year after their grand adventure, the wedding of Will and Elizabeth is interrupted by Cutler Beckett, who arrests the two and assumes control of Port Royal from Weatherby Swan. After escaping a Turkish prison with the help of Edward Teague, Jack Sparrow returns to the Black Pearl with a drawing of the key to the dead man's chest. Will sets out to find Jack and take his compass to free Elizabeth, and Elizabeth herself escapes capture and sets out to find Will. Jack and Will reunite, visit Tia Dalma, and Jack sends Will to serve as a good faith payment for Davy Jones, as Jack searches for the dead man's chest in order to defeat Jones. Jack, Will, and Norrington all arrive at Isla Cruces and battle over control of the chest. Norrington later steals the heart of Davy Jones, and Jones has the Kraken sink the Black Pearl, as Jack dies in a vain attempt to defend his ship. Norrington presents the heart of Jones to Beckett, and is reinstated as Admiral. Davy Jones then becomes a slave to Beckett. Meanwhile, the surviving crew of the Black Pearl meet Tia Dalma, who explains that she knows how to find Jack, and the newly revived Hector Barbossa will show them the way. Soon after, Davy Jones is forced to kill the Kraken at the command of Beckett. 2 months later, the East India Trading Company held a mass hanging at Fort Charles. The Flying Dutchman worked at the will of the company and sailed the seas preying on all pirate ships. The crew of the Black Pearl, under the command of Barbossa, sailed to the farthest gate in order to enter Davy Jones's locker to rescue Jack, since he is one of the 9 pirate lords capable of releasing Calypso from her human form. The crew finds Jack.
Don't need you, you scare me.
Returns to their own world, and Sao Feng is killed on board his ship, the Empress. He names Elizabeth as a pirate lord as his final act. Norrington dies, protecting Elizabeth as she escapes the Dutchman, and the Fourth Brethren Court convenes, where Barbossa tries to make the case to release Calypso, and Jack wants to wage war against the East India Trading Company. Elizabeth was also crowned the Pirate King. They released Calypso from her human form as Tia Dalma, and she created a maelstrom, in which the Flying Dutchman and the Black Pearl battled for control over the seas. Will and Elizabeth are wed during the battle, and Jack battles Davy Jones for the dead man's chest. After being stabbed by Jones, Will, with the help of Jack, stabs the heart of Davy Jones, and his body is laid to rest in the depths of the sea. Since the heart of Davy Jones had a curse, Will then becomes the captain of the Flying Dutchman, and aided the Black Pearl in destroying the Endeavour, which marked the end of Lord Cutler Beckett. After the battle, Will and Elizabeth spend a day on land together and conceive a child. Will returns to the Dutchman and sets out on his task to ferry lost souls to worlds beyond for the next 10 years. Barbossa sails away with the Black Pearl once again, Mr. Gibbs stays on Tortuga, and Jack uses the Malcun map to complete the long-lost voyage of Ponce de Leon in search of the Fountain of Youth. In 1730, 9 months after the Maelstrom battle, Henry Turner is born. In 1732, Karina Smith was born to Hector Barbossa and Margaret Smith, the latter having died soon after, and she was raised in an orphanage. The only artifact of her parentage was the diary of Galileo Galilei. In August of 1739, Henry and Elizabeth await the return of Will, and believe that the curse would be broken after 10 years of servitude aboard the Dutchman. Sadly, Will returns to the Dutchman after spending 1 day with his family, and he sets out to the sea for the next 10 years. In 1742, Henry attempts to drown himself, but is saved by his father. Henry tells Will about the Trident of Poseidon and how it could release him from his duty, but Will tells him to forget all about it. In 1746, Blackbeard attacked the Black Pearl, and used his magic to shrink the pearl and turn it into a ship in a bottle. In 1750, Blackbeard and his daughter Angelica, who was also a former lover of Jack Sparrow's, sets out to find the Fountain of Youth. Jack is forced to join them, and the privateer Hector Barbossa chases after them in order to get revenge for his defeat. The Fountain of Youth was destroyed by the Spanish, as it was seen as a defiance of God to live forever. Meanwhile, Karina Smith sets out to find St. Martin, to find the map that no man can read and the Trident of Poseidon. At some point soon after, Jack sails to Isla Tesoro and looks for treasure there. Barbossa arrives soon after and sends his ships to plunder the city of Puerto Dorado in search of Jack. The fort of El Castillo del Morro battles with fierce resistance to Barbossa. However, they were ultimately defeated. The citizens of the town became the final line of defense, however they were all defeated soon after, and the crew burned the city to the ground. In the ensuing chaos, Jack manages to find the treasure and revels in his victory. However, his compass points to his next voyage soon after. Not long after the decimation of the town, Puerto Dorado became a free port and pirate haven, much like Tortuga. Angelica Teach also started a restaurant in the Blue Lagoon. However, Jack would win over the ownership in a sword duel, renaming it Captain Jack's. The town would prosper, and Barbossa's crew would hide the treasure in the Dead Man's Cove. However, unbeknownst to the crew, the treasure was actually cursed, and the crew soon turned into undead skeletons. It likely did not affect Barbossa, given that he likely did not trust potentially cursed gold after all his years of being a member of the undead. In 1751, the spirit of Armando Salazar escapes the Devil's Triangle after the curse was broken by Jack selling his magical compass. He then hunts Jack down. He forces Barbossa to find Jack. However, Jack and Barbossa work together to help both Henry Turner and Karina Smith find the Trident of Poseidon. They succeed, and in doing so, Salazar comes back to life, only to be killed in an act of self-sacrifice by Barbossa in order to protect Karina. Will and Elizabeth are reunited, and Jack sets out on another adventure. However, the Dutchman must have a captain.
So says I, Davy Jones.
This is where the story becomes far stranger, as the sixth film was never produced. However, the world of Pirates of the Caribbean still has stories to tell. At some point after all of the sea's curses were lifted, Davy Jones returns from the dead. The details of his return are limited. However, what we do know is that Jack Sparrow managed to find the stronghold that belonged to Davy Jones, in search of a piece of treasure that would allow him to travel between worlds at will. We must now discuss the timeline of the game Sea of Thieves, which does tie into the Pirates of the Caribbean universe later on. But for the full context, I will be discussing it in full here. Since the game takes place in a quasi-parallel universe, pinpointing exact years for each event is nearly impossible. So until we return to the Pirates of the Caribbean universe proper, I will be referring to events in eras. The Ancient Era. The early days of the Sea of Thieves are shrouded in mystery. However, what we do know is that there are many civilizations that inhabited the islands and the depths of the sea. At some point during this era, the Devil's Shroud forms. This impenetrable fog sinks ships who dare enter or leave the Sea of Thieves. However, the ancients created artifacts that allowed them safe travel through the fog. The earliest known civilizations that can be found within this world have ruins scattered across the seas, and their relics and imagery have become part of the culture of the area. Their currency was likely ancient coins, and there was evidence of them being a strong seafaring empire. At some point, an ancient priest sought to connect the Sea of Thieves with the Sea of the Damned. Keep a pin in that, since the Sea of the Damned has a very important role to play later. The priest stopped his dangerous practices after coming to understand the necessary balance between life and death. At this time, the ancients had a very strong relationship with the civilization of the merfolk. The Mer spoke in a language that was unintelligible to humans, but could be heard as a song. At some point, the oldest kraken in the Sea of Thieves, known as the Old Mother, would attack the Mer because their queen broke a sacred promise. The kraken would awaken every 100 years to prey on the Mer thereafter. The Mer Queen and a human warrior fell in love, and they both searched for a way to be together forever. The warrior was so convicted that he attempted to use the powers of the Sea of Thieves itself to bridge the gap. The ancients feared what would happen if the warrior was successful, so the king and the high priest devised a plan to kill the warrior by poisoning him. However, this plan was unsuccessful. The queen then decided to use magical stones to turn the warrior into a Mer, and while the spell was successful, the violation of the natural order placed a curse on the queen, a plague that would turn the peaceful Mer into terrible sirens. Eventually, the Old Mother returned, and the ancients and Mer teamed up to defeat it. Eventually, the ancients captured the newly crowned Siren King, and this sparked a war between the ancients and sirens, and would lead to the undying hatred of humans by the sirens. Eventually, the Siren King's soul was bound to a chest, which became the Chest of Eternal Sorrow. Eventually, the sirens began to worship the Old Mother, and this sparked a war against the remaining uncorrupted Mer, who teamed up with the Ancients. The Siren Queen eventually created a curse that turned humans into ocean crawlers as a way of keeping the Ancients occupied on land. A warrior would eventually scare off the Sirens, but she had been affected by the plague, so the Ancients entombed her in an undersea vault. The Era of Legends. Outside the Sea of Thieves grew a large trading monopoly called the Grand Maritime Union, which was strikingly similar to the East India Trading Company. It was unknown if the Sea of Thieves has a larger world outside of this that exists separately from the Pirates of the Caribbean universe, or if this was part of the Pirates of the Caribbean timeline as another organization that existed concurrently with previously established events. Meanwhile, the soon-to-become Pirate Lord Ramsay sets up camp at an island just outside of the Shroud, dreaming of day he could sail into the boundless unknown of the mystical Sea of Thieves. Soon after, Ramsay assembles a crew aboard a small ship and sails into the Shroud. The crew eventually escape the fog and find themselves in a long, uninhabited sea, filled with islands, ruins, and treasure. After a month of exploring, the crew returned to their world, and they told stories about their great adventure to other pirates. Eventually, one of their navigational charts revealing how to enter the Sea of Thieves was leaked, and more pirate crews set sail to find the mythical place. Soon after, Ramsay and his crew returned to the Sea of Thieves and create a hideout at an island that would later be known as Thieves' Hideout. After returning from a voyage one night, Ramsay finds that the hideout had been ransacked, and he soon learns that it was the doing of one of his crewmates, Rathbone. Soon after, 3 other crews engaged into the first ever battle in the Sea of Thieves. The outcome of the battle remains unknown. One day, the pirate Mercio was at a tavern, where he heard of some place near the Shroud, where there were strange occurrences underwater. He sailed to the location of the strange activity with Ramsay and the rest of his crew, and found a temple with magic earrings of the Ancients that allowed him to communicate with the peaceful Mer of the area, of which they believed he and Ramsay to be the descendants of the Ancients. Later, Ramsay hears of a man called Captain Douglas who captured 2 Mer. Ramsay and his crew free the Mer, and Ramsay accidentally released a curse that turned Douglas into stone. As a show of gratitude for their freedom, the Mer gifted Ramsay the enchanted chains that were used on the Old Mother, which he used to turn into keys for chests that ensure that only the rightful owner of a chest could open it. This was the beginning of pirates using magic in the Sea of Thieves. Soon after, Ramsay invokes the right of parley to bring together all the major pirates in the Sea of Thieves at Golden Sands Outpost, where they would agree on an alliance to prevent crews from stealing from one another to such an insane degree. The parley was interrupted by a Kraken attack, in which they all worked together to slay the beast. During the chaos of the Kraken attack, Rathbone decided to betray Ramsay, and he stole all of the treasure that the pirate crews had collected. He started the Gold Hoarder Trading Company, where he would give a small sum of gold to other pirates to bring him locked chests of gold that could only be opened using magical keys. And this is where we come to one of the deadliest threats of the Sea of Thieves, Captain Flameheart. Flameheart disagreed with the code of honor set by Ramsay and the other crews, so he set to take over the Sea of Thieves with his merciless legions of undead skeletons. In order to do this, Flameheart used dark ashen magic to turn some of his crewmates into Ashen Lords, who were skeletal beings capable of using powerful fire-based attacks. Eventually, while on the run from Captain Flameheart and his ship, the Burning Blade, Ramsay's ship, the Magpie's Wing, met an untimely end and sank to the shallow reefs below. Ramsay was trying to find the mythical lands tucked away in the Shroud called the Shores of Gold. One day, Rathbone becomes aware of the Shores of Gold and sets out to find it. Upon his arrival, his lust for gold became insatiable, and he filled his ship with all the gold he could possibly bring. When he attempted to leave the Shores of Gold, he was met with a fleet of pirate ships that destroyed his ship as retaliation for the violation of the Sea of Thieves pirate code. His love of gold was so strong, however, that his very body had become cursed. Rathbone's body had become a creature that was but a mere skeleton made of gold and gemstones. Rathbone would forever be known from here on out as the Gold Hoarder. Eventually, the pirate Briggsy uses the Shroudbreaker to reach the Shores of Gold for herself. She arrived at the island only to become cursed by touching a piece of gold. The Gold Hoarder promises her a cure, but she defies him and breaks the Shroudbreaker and hides the relic where she found it. Captain Flameheart eventually goes into hiding, and eventually dies while in isolation. His spirit is bound to his corpse, and his remains rested at Flintlock Peninsula, but were eventually brought on board the Ashen Dragon. Meanwhile, an unknown sailor would assume command of a ship sailing in the Sea of the Damned, and he would sacrifice his freedom to become captain of the Ferry of the Damned. His sacred duty had become ferrying souls back to the world of the living, so long as they obeyed the pirate code. He employed the help of creatures called wraiths, and he would also trap threats to the Sea of Thieves in the lower decks. After witnessing a vision of herself in the future, the young Madame Olivia gathers some friends and sets sail into the Sea of Thieves and establishes the Order of Souls Trading Company. Sir Arthur Pendragon eventually catches word of the Sea of Thieves and makes his voyage out there, as a way of being able to sail freely without doing the bidding of the British Empire. He stumbles upon the cursed crew of the Black Witch, but he breaks the curse for them. In return, he is given the Black Witch to sail as his own personal vessel. The former captain of the Black Witch, Richard Cavendish, tells Pendragon to find his daughter, Anna Cavendish. Pendragon would be of service to the Order of Souls frequently, and for his continued support to the company, Madame Olivia gifted Pendragon the Sword of Souls, which allowed him to break curses and free bound souls. While on a mission near Keelhaul Fort, Pendragon drowns while swimming too deep into an underwater cave, and he comes face to face with the ferryman. The ferryman tells Pendragon to find a magical lantern that he could use to find wayward souls. Once he returned to the Sea of Thieves after death, he finds a magical lantern, and soon after returns to the Ferry of the Damned, and he uses the Well of Fate to unlock the mysterious properties of the lantern. The final mission of Pendragon was to vanquish the skeleton lord Greymarrow. However, Pendragon was bested in combat and was sealed within a portrait of himself in his now shipwrecked vessel. Later, a member of the Grand Maritime Union named Molly quickly rises through the ranks of the company, and is asked to lead a fleet of ships into the Sea of Thieves to establish a foothold in trade there. Her fleet was destroyed by the Shroud, and she was left alone in the Sea of Thieves. Thankfully, she was saved by a band of pirates, and she eventually started the Merchants Alliance Trading Company. Later, a group of pirates created an alliance to explore more of the Sea of Thieves and use the Shroudbreaker to explore the Devil's Roar. Once they arrived, one of their members, named Stitcher Jim, found an artifact that made him lose his mind, and eventually he murdered much of his crewmates. Later, a pirate named Merrick tries to summon a Megalodon using an ancient song. However, this resulted in the destruction of his ship and the death of his entire crew, and he even lost his own legs during the altercation. The adopted son of Captain Flameheart had dreamed of becoming a legendary pirate much like his father, so he bartered passage into the Sea of Thieves, where he purchased his own ship and assembled a crew. On one of his first voyages, Flameheart Jr. was ambushed by other pirates, and in desperation, he sailed into the fog of the Devil's Shroud. Given the nature of the Shroud, Flameheart Jr.'s ship was destroyed, and he and his crew were stranded on an unknown island, where they found a cave and ventured inside of it. They kept exploring the cave, eventually starving to death, and Flameheart Jr. became a collection of skeletons, with only Flameheart Jr. himself retaining his memories and becoming a skeleton lord. At the end of the cave, Flameheart Jr. met a mysterious and undead pirate known as the Captain, who was the captain of a ship that his father served aboard, and he asked Flameheart Jr. if he would help him become an eternal pirate. Finally, after years of serving as a pirate lord in the Sea of Thieves, and having served with a multitude of different crewmen throughout his life, the pirate Lord Ramsay found that his adventures were no longer worth it without his first crew. As his final act, he decided to pay a visit to his old friend Rathbone, now fully corrupted as the Gold Hoarder, and he told him of his adventures through the years. Eventually, he announced his retirement, and soon after, Ramsay had died of an unknown cause. He was, however, capable of living on as a ghost inhabiting the Sea of Thieves by drinking from the tankard of everlasting life and wearing a magic necklace. From beyond the grave, Ramsay guides new sailors into the Sea of Thieves, and when they complete their journey to becoming a pirate legend, he meets with them again, welcoming them as members of the group. One day, Larinna stows away on a boat on its way to the Sea of Thieves. After some successful voyages, Ramsay's ghost offers Larinna a place among the pirate legends, of which she declines so she could operate her own group. The Golden Era. This is the era of the Sea of Thieves that is pretty much covered by playing the game, so I will not be going into too much detail here. The focus of this will be mostly on the Pirate's Life Tall Tales and anything else that is not just a content update for the game, but actual substantial story beats for the game. During this age, the Devil's Roar opened up to the greater Sea of Thieves, due to pieces of the Shroudbreaker being scattered far enough away that the entire region would be unaffected by the Devil's Shroud. Two new trading companies would appear in the Sea of Thieves. The Sea Dogs, which were founded by the children of Ramsay, was a trading group based around gaining reputation through the glory of battle. The other trading company, the Hunter's Call, was founded by Merrick and his family, and this company is based around fishing and hunting the wildlife of the Sea of Thieves. Eventually, the long-lost Shroudbreaker and the Shores of Gold become topics of interest at various taverns across the Sea of Thieves, and many begin their search for the ancient key to the island. A crew of pirates meet with Madame Olivia, who instructs them to find Captain Briggsy, as she was the only person to successfully return from the Shores of Gold alive. However, when they confront Briggsy, she had turned into an undead skeleton. Upon defeating Briggsy, her skull was brought to Madame Olivia, who deciphered the clues as to the location of the gemstones that power the Shroudbreaker. Eventually, after meeting another pirate who knew Briggsy in life, the pirates successfully learned the location of the gemstones. On their way to the last gemstone, the pirates come across two now-deceased members of Briggsy's crew, George and Wild Rose. As it turned out, the two were set to be married. However, they were killed by the skeleton Captain Rook, and had their souls bound to objects. Upon being freed, their souls were free to traverse to the afterlife. Finally, the last gemstone of the Shroudbreaker was taken from the skeleton lord Greymarrow, and the crew repair the Shroudbreaker, and set sail for the Shores of Gold. Upon their arrival, they encounter the Gold Hoarder, but ultimately defeat him. Once defeated, Ramsay's ghost appears to congratulate the crew, but asks them to leave the gold as it has corrupted many before. Not all treasure is silver and gold after all. After a long period of time where the Sea of Thieves sees great economic and social prosperity, a mysterious masked stranger sets up camp on an island east of the Sea Dogs' headquarters. Due to influences from dark magic, Old Boot Fort becomes the Fort of the Damned. This becomes the newest in deadly skeleton forts, and the most dangerous one to challenge. Eventually, Sir Arthur Pendragon is freed from his imprisonment inside of his portrait, and he resumed his sacred task of freeing bound souls. Unbeknownst to Pendragon, however, one of the souls he would free was the soul of Captain Flameheart, the infamous pirate interloper set out to rule the Sea of Thieves from beyond the grave. The return of Flameheart marked a new wave of ashen skeleton lords at forts and caused havoc across the Sea of Thieves. Soon after, the pirates are tasked with helping prevent Flameheart from taking over control of the seas. Not long after, the Reaper's hideout is established on the grounds of the previous mysterious activity east of the Sea Dogs' headquarters. This hideout housed a new trading company, the Reaper's Bones, and this group sought to live a chaotic pirate life, free of obeying the pirate code or any overall ethical behavior. Later, Flameheart summoned spectral ships from the Sea of the Damned, amassing large fleets to rule over large areas of sea. Eventually, the long-forgotten and presumed to be extinct race of sirens make their return to the Sea of Thieves, likely due to support from Davy Jones himself. Now this is where we return to the story of Captain Jack Sparrow. As mentioned before, Jack had sailed to the Sea of Thieves after having stolen a magical artifact from Davy Jones. After his arrival, the Black Pearl is sunk, and Jack dies in battle. Arriving at the Ferry of the Damned, the ferryman believes that Jack represents a huge threat to the Sea of Thieves and the greater world's oceans themselves. The ferryman has Jack locked away in the lower decks of the Ferry of the Damned, seemingly for all eternity. Upon his arrival in the Sea of Thieves, Davy Jones quickly learns that he has no control over the nature of life and death here. To change that, he created an alliance with Duke, the Masked Stranger, the Captain, and the Gold Hoarder. This group would become known as the Dark Brethren. While fleeing with treasure on board his ship, a pirate known as the Cursed Captain retreated into a storm that was actually a gateway to the Sea of the Damned. In an attempt to prevent the ferryman from finding him and his crew, the Cursed Captain had the lighthouse at Sailor's Grave extinguished. The crew grew restless and became fed up with their captain, so they had his skull placed in a cage as a form of mutiny. Soon after, a mysterious castaway sets up camp at various outposts across the Sea of Thieves. She recruits a ragtag group of pirates to set out and rescue the one person she believes to hold the key to saving the pirate's life. Upon arrival into the Sea of the Damned through a portal the castaway seemingly created, the pirate crew managed to save the Cursed Captain and help him recover his body. In return, he helped them sneak aboard the Ferry of the Damned. On board the ship, the pirates managed to find the one and only Captain Jack Sparrow and free him from his cell. Upon his release, the Flying Dutchman appears and engages the Ferry of the Damned in battle. During the skirmish, Jack loses the treasure he was guarding to an ocean crawler that was under the command of Jones. Jack falls off of the ferry and is lost in the Sea of the Damned. Soon after, the castaway sends the pirates to find the now sunken Black Pearl that would help the crew find Jack. While under the sea, the pirates are lured into the Sunken Kingdom, where they engage the Siren Queen in battle and defeat the Kraken as well. They eventually make their way to the prison room, where they free Mr. Gibbs, Anna Maria, and Scrum from their imprisonment within the cursed mermaid statues. The castaway once again sends the crew into the Sea of the Damned, and the crew sail through Jack's memories from years past. They travel to a Spanish fort that Jack likely spent time as a prisoner at. They visited Isla Tesoro to see the invasion of the town firsthand and witnessed a memory of the Black Pearl being sunk by the Kraken. They eventually arrive at a tavern where Pendragon, Wild Rose, and George convince Jack Sparrow to go with the pirate crew back to the Sea of Thieves, in order to save the pirate's life from Davy Jones. Now with Jack on their side, the crew sails to the fortress of Davy Jones, where they intervened in a ritual designed to merge the Sea of Thieves with the Sea of the Damned. Finally, the crew is sent out to take Davy Jones head on, but not before the castaway revealed herself to actually be Calypso. Upon arriving at the spire where Jones's plan is put into action, the crew battles waves of phantom ships until heroic ships from the Sea of the Damned, captained by the greatest pirates the Sea of Thieves has ever seen, aid the pirate crew in battle. The crew makes it to the spire, where it is revealed that Cutler Beckett has also taken advantage of the opportunity to return to the world of the living. Calypso strikes at the heart of Davy Jones, and he is soon defeated. In the aftermath of the battle, the ferryman vows to keep Jones locked up in the lower decks of the Ferry of the Damned, and he grants Jack Sparrow, Wild Rose, and George a second chance at life. Wild Rose and George join Jack's crew, and soon set sail beyond the horizon, back to Jack's own world. In the aftermath of Davy Jones's attempted destruction of the Sea of Thieves, sirens, phantoms, and ocean crawlers become commonplace. Eventually, the pirate crew would voyage to the underwater kingdoms and temples that the ancients had built that were currently being ruled by sirens. Eventually, after the now weakened state of the Sea of Thieves truly set in, a mysterious fog washed over many islands. Specifically, Golden Sands Outpost was hit the hardest and was outright destroyed, and its inhabitants imprisoned within the ghostly Spanish forts. The crew then teams up with the mysterious pirate Lord Bell to put an end to Flameheart's schemes. And this is where we depart from the magical waters of the Sea of Thieves, where we return to the main universe of the Pirates of the Caribbean story. After returning from the Sea of Thieves, Jack returned to Isla Tesoro to steal the treasure that had cursed much of Barbossa's crew. He managed to steal the treasure back after all these years, however it is unknown if he became cursed at any point as well. Eventually, Jack, Will, and Elizabeth reunited once again to visit an island up the Mississippi River, in what would eventually become the state of Missouri. As it turned out, Pintel and Ragetti, the two pirates who had served under Jack and Barbossa years ago, had become cursed again and guarded treasure on this island as undead pirates. This is the last known point in history in which Elizabeth Swann and Will Turner are present. However, Jack Sparrow had one final trick up his sleeve. Jack is well established to be a longtime friend of Trader Sam, a near-immortal witch doctor that runs his own bar called Trader Sam's Enchanted Tiki Bar. Within this bar, there is a picture visible of Jack Sparrow on what seems like Isla Pelagostos. The real anomaly here is that photography was invented in the 1830s, and our last account of activity from Jack Sparrow was in the 1750s. This would mean, given that Jack was born in 1690, that he lives to be at least 140 years of age. There's very likely chance that Jack struck a deal with Trader Sam in order to have a spell put on him that would keep him alive forever. But the legacy of Jack Sparrow and the pirate's life as a whole would be profound, as many members of the Society of Explorers and Adventurers, also known as the Sea, would take a keen interest in them, specifically Dr. Mary Oceaneer. And his legacy on the real world would be even greater. It cannot be overstated that this universe of swashbuckling heroes is very near and dear to not only my heart, but to the hearts of many others. For me, it was a huge influence on my interest in filmmaking, history, and obviously, pirates. I remember being around 5 years old when I first went on the Pirates of the Caribbean ride at the Magic Kingdom. I was absolutely enthralled in the adventure of all of it, and in the years since, the ride has seen many changes. There are right now, as you are watching this very video, many children who are having similar experiences to me when I was a child. So on behalf of all of the fans of Pirates of the Caribbean, to those who love the franchise with all of its highest of highs and its occasional faults, I would like to issue a sincere thank you to all of the wonderful creatives who have worked to bring this world to life. Thank you to the game development team at Rare for bringing us the incredible Sea of Thieves universe. Thank you to Hans Zimmer for creating an iconic and beautiful soundscape for the High Seas adventures. Thank you to the Imagineers who currently update the ride and the ones who originally made the ride in the 1960s. Thank you to the actors who threw all of their skills into the roles and made fantastical pirates seem like real human beings. And especially thank you to Jeffrey Rush, Keira Knightley, Orlando Bloom, and of course, Johnny Depp for portraying these great heroes and villains that we can all see a part of ourselves in. These movies would not have been nearly as incredible without their fantastic performances throughout. Thank you, Gore Verbinski, for accepting the challenge of directing a film based on a theme park ride and going above and beyond with it. And finally, thank you to Walt Disney for dreaming up this world in the first place. And while I'm on a high for giving thank yous, I might as well give a huge thank you to all of my subscribers. I'm very proud of the community I have created in the 3 years since I started my channel, and I would like to show that thanks with a little something back for supporting me for so long. Thank you to my crew. Thank you, everyone. Remember to keep sailing beyond that horizon and treat every day as a new adventure. Drink up, me hearties. Yo ho.